You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network. This is the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of Thunderquack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's Thunderquack time!
Hello and welcome back to the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of thunderquack.com, which you can get early every Tuesday over at patreon.com/thunderquack, just like our Patreon producers, Brian Murawski and JJ Samuel do, or you can wait and get it late every Friday on podcast services across the galaxy. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
And I'm your other host, Amanda Conkin.
And we're back. Last week was the first episode of the podcast that I named literally 5 minutes before recording it, off the record. So that's our new Patreon exclusive podcast. So you gotta be supporting over on Patreon at
I like that
at $5
title
or above. Yeah.
Off the record. I like it. Because you can't be held accountable for anything that you say on that podcast.
Yeah, that's what that means.
Right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't gotten any complaints yet. I haven't really gotten a lot of positive feedback either. But
You had to vamp for like a whole podcast by yourself. I love it.
I mean, I just had to podcast by myself. It wasn't really vamping. It was just recording an episode. But
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. There's a distinct difference between the way that I look at podcasting and the way that you look at podcasting. Whereas, like, I do this because I want to do it, and it feels like sometimes you do it because you're being told to do it. So to use the word vamp when it's like, no, I'm just recording a podcast by myself. You don't have to vamp when you're by yourself. You just are performing.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I podcast because otherwise I would never see you or talk to you. I think is what it is, because we know that I'm maybe not the most follow through of people. So I need planned things and it figures it out. But I am the worst. I don't listen to podcasts. I just make podcasts. And I don't make podcasts. I make very specifically just this one because you do all the work. So thank you again, Mike, for making this possible. I do enjoy chatting with you every week about random things. People should really send us suggestions straight up.
Yeah, they could do that. Yeah, I mean, like, I got a couple of things to talk about.
Yay.
We got Mandalorian is starting up soon. I'll just briefly say that that means that Faster, More Intense is coming back with weekly recaps of the Mandalorian. That will be like basically starting the first week of November, because Mandalorian is back on Disney Plus on October 30th, which is
I'm excited for that.
Friday. Yeah.
I'm excited for that because The Boys was it comes in nicely because The Boys was the one thing that I was watching with any regularity.
Yeah.
And so it'll be nice to have something else that comes in.
Yeah, like I finished The Boys and then I jumped on to Haunting of Bly Manor, which I'll talk about in a minute. And right now, like, I'm in a bit of a limbo. Like, so what I'll probably end up doing is what I usually end up doing in between series, which is like I'll bounce around to all of the like weird true crime things on Netflix, and like I'll just I actually watched one the other day that was about a woman who just mysteriously went missing, and it was just like a one and done like documentary sort of thing, but all of everything was from text messages, and it was basically all of the evidence in the case. So it was all text messages and body cam footage and security camera footage and stuff. So there were no like interviews or anything like that. Like everything was just sort of the stuff that was incidental and recorded by nature of the fact that we record everything nowadays. So like that conceit of it was interesting to me. I wanted to see how they would tell that story with that as sort of the method. The case itself was like within 15 minutes. This is not a spoil. I can't even remember what it's called. This is not a spoiler. It was very obvious that the husband had killed this woman and their 2 children. Like it was like, yeah, it's just a matter of finding out how it happened, and where they're gonna catch him in the lie, and how they're gonna crack this case. And yeah, I mean, it was very simple. He went from being kind of overweight to being ripped, and like in super good shape, and then all of a sudden his wife and 2 daughters go missing, and it's like,
sorry. So wait, this is Bly Manor?
No, this was like a documentary.
That you watched before. Oh, okay, sorry. I was so confused because you were like, I was talking about Bly Manor in a minute, and I was like, wait, so are you talking about it?
Yeah, I said I'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
I said what I do in between series, because I just finished Bly Manor the other day, and
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
I was so confused.
It was just one of those things where it's like because it was only like an hour and something. I was like, well, I guess I'll finish this. Like, I don't need closure, but I think I want closure on this. There are a few, like, I enjoy the true crime stuff, in general, but it's rough when it involves kids. Like, because there's a lot of those on Netflix that it's like you get into it and it's like, oh, and then this kid goes missing, and it's like, well, I don't want to, like, you're just giving me anxiety about my own kids. But I prefer it when it's like when it's about like, I really
Tigers.
prefer like no, that's not, I mean, Tiger King was more of a comedy than, and it wasn't
true crime. Come on.
That was not true crime.
Someone ended up in jail.
There wasn't anything going on in Tiger King. It was just a bunch of really garbage people doing really garbage things. Like, the thing about Tiger King, and we've talked about this already, way back at the beginning of quarantine, there are no heroes in Tiger King. No one is a good guy in Tiger King, except for, like, what do we say? Saf is the only good guy. In Tiger King, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else is absolutely, like sketchy and, no, I mean, like I actually really enjoyed the Jeffrey Epstein one.
I started watching that. It was hard to watch.
It's tough, but because obviously the subject matter is difficult, but I think it's also important. I think it's thorough without being tedious, which is nice. And so, it took what was a headline and then became a meme and made it like an actual digestible story that you could learn about. My favorite true crime that I've watched in the last little while, like really since the beginning of quarantine, was McMillions, which is it's an HBO one, and it's about the and this is exactly like right in the sweet spot of the sort of stuff that I like. It was about a guy who worked for McDonald's in the 90s and was using the monopoly, which it's going on right now in Canada.
I know, yeah. I love the Monopoly.
They use the Monopoly
McDonald's
promotion as a way to basically like embezzle money, more or less. I mean, like, he had access to the winning stamp things or whatever, and was basically selling them to people. I mean, it's a really great docuseries.
Seems like a very complicated scheme. I don't know.
It absolutely was, and it's so it has such amazing people in it. One of the FBI guys is just like everything that you like. You get. I guarantee that when these documentary filmmakers were gathering stuff, and then they came across this guy, they were like, yeah, we got a story here. Here it is. This, like, Because this guy he's such a cowboy sort of thing. Yeah, man. McMillions is so good. I can't recommend that one highly enough. But yeah.
So random.
So I'll jump into some stuff like that. I'll get caught up on things like probably like John Oliver and whatever. I'll watch a few episodes of. But
oh, is it back? Oh, right. I gotta start watching John Oliver again. I just can't do true crime, man. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of stuff that's like reality television, because that's a branch of reality television.
No, it's not.
Come on, it's like heightened reality.
That's so insulting. That's so insulting.
What? Okay.
No, a documentary about true crime is a documentary.
Okay.
Reality television is Survivor or The Amazing Race. That's so insulting to the people who make those. Reality television requires no effort. It requires no skill. It's paint by numbers.
No, come on.
No, it's point as many cameras as you can at these people and wait for them to say something stupid. And then you edit it together in the exact same way every single time. I guarantee you that anyone with a basic understanding of reality TV could put together an episode of Big Brother or Survivor or whatever with the footage that they're given.
I mean,
crafting a story out of a documentary, out of hundreds of hours of very boring footage, is an art form, and documentary storytelling is one of the hardest things to do in filmmaking.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's such a difference from reality TV.
I'm going to say that, I mean, reality television is probably also quite boring. Like, we've talked about this before, how I watched, there was a panel about reality television producers who were really, like, doubling down, being like, you have to know what you're doing and all this stuff. And I'm kind of like, I agree, but also you have to have a certain amount of knowledge. Like, they had equated making reality television to being a surgeon. Like, just because you watch surgeries doesn't mean you can necessarily know how to perform surgery. And I remember specifically bringing up on the podcast that I'm like, well, no, how you learn to do surgeries is by first watching people do surgeries and then doing them. So there's something to that. Like, you watch enough reality television, you understand the conceit. But setting it up, it's the same idea. You have footage and you have to comb through it. You just are looking for a different quality footage.
But with a documentary, a lot of the time you don't know what the story is. It's a form of journalism, right? Like, you go out and you're looking for the story. You have to find it it's the needle in the haystack. Reality TV is the polar opposite of that, where you are literally casting people from thousands of applicants and you're going like, that guy's going to cause problems. That guy's got an interesting backstory. That girl is, like, can do something that'll be interesting in, like, whatever the context is, right? Like, you're stacking the deck. It's the polar opposite of what you do when you're documentary filmmaking. Now, sometimes when you're making a documentary, you get lucky and you find a person that unlocks the story for you, right? It's like Tiger King is a really great example where, like, it's the TV producer, right? That guy. If that guy doesn't exist, that story doesn't go anywhere, right? Because it's his footage, it's his, like, archive of stuff, and his stories that are the through line throughout the whole thing. So, like, that, sometimes you get lucky with that, and that's why Tiger King almost feels like reality TV. It's also the type of people that are in Tiger King that are very often, you throw 1 or 2 or 3 or 12 of them into a house like in Big Brother, and that's how you get a reality TV show. So, well,
I mean, it started out as a documentary, right?
So Tiger King started out as
a documentary about snakes, right? No, it was the guy that went to do a documentary. The guy that actually wound up doing Tiger King.
Yeah.
Right?
But then, the story behind it, like, the reason why there's all the footage and the stories and stuff like that, and that one TV producer guy, is because they were making reality TV, right?
On the different thing. Yeah. And I mean, okay, I'm just, in terms of, like, aesthetic stuff, there's, in the same way that I know people that think it's really frustrating when people say that animation is a genre, because it's not. Animation is a media form, and you can make all types of content, like animated content. But the idea of, like, reality to me is, like, this is like a term to, like, you still are documenting certain things and like the footage that is going. So it's just in my brain that like true crime dramas are from like realism and like
but
not fictional
saying
narratives.
reality TV is like, that's a loaded term. So and you know that. I know that you know that. So
I mean, yes, I do, but I also don't watch enough I have no idea what true crime dramas. To me, true crime dramas stoke the same fires that reality television does. As someone who is not a viewer of either of those art forms, because they are art forms and people specifically make them for specific audiences, they trigger on the same things for me, and they require in both of those art forms, in something that's different from film and from television, the editors are king in both, like, reality television and sort of docudrama and like anything that requires like footage that is like en masse. Editors become a very crucial storyteller, where they're crucial in other ways on multiple other forms of media, but not in the same way. And so I just feel like there's some interconnectedness between both of those things. So
yeah, I mean, there are similarities.
Why I use
there are similarities, but they're to me, they're opposite ends of the spectrum completely. And one is very much engineered to tell a story, and then the other one is it's like if you were to go to a museum and there's Michelangelo's David is there, and then a 3D printed version of David right next to it. I would look at that 3D printed version of David, and like, if it was accurate and it was skillfully made, I'd go, that's impressive, but all you did was 3D print the sculpture that already exists, right? Whereas like Michelangelo, he chipped away the marble until there you go, there's a statue, right? Like, and to me, like, that's the difference, is that like you're looking at something and going, I want to make something out of nothing with reality TV, whereas with a documentary, you have to find it. It's in there somewhere, and you have to find it. And not all documentaries are good. So you've probably had bad experiences with documentaries, and it's very easy. There are a lot of documentaries. There are a lot of people who go into documentary filmmaking because they think that it's easier than making a fictional story, like than it is to craft a story from whole cloth. It's not. Having done both in film school, like, documentary is hard. It's very, very difficult to do well. And I'll take a crafted narrative any day of the week, but yeah, it's to me, those two things are night and day.
I mean, it makes sense. I'm glad that you watch or true crime stuff, and that
you keep going back to true crime, and it's like, yeah, that, like, and it's fair, because that's how I brought it up, but it's documentaries in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, I'll probably look at, like, I'll probably watch a couple more true crime things, or maybe actually finish a couple of them. But usually, if I don't finish it, then you never watch Making a Murderer?
Correct.
Yeah. Did you try, or did you just go,
No, it's not my jam, man. I don't want to watch it. Yeah.
See, the great thing about watching Making a Murderer is then you get to watch American Vandal, which is that's what
isn't
it's
that
called, right?
Isn't that like a fake version of Making a Murderer?
Exactly.
Oh god,
exactly.
It's just what is worse than watching true crime is
you can't watch American Vandal. That's what it's called, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You can't watch American Vandal without having watched Making a Murderer first. And American Vandal seasons 1 and 2, which unfortunately is all they're ever going to make of it, are exquisite. They're so good. They're so good. Yeah, man. Oh my God.
I'm glad you love it.
And I mean, like, Making a Murderer is also excellent. It's very well made. it's exploitative in the same way that reality television is, but I mean, not in the same way, but in similar ways to reality TV. But,
some might say that it's because it uses similar tropes in order to get its footage in.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
yes, somewhat, but yeah, I don't know. I there's nothing really. I don't think that there's anything that's really like caught the attention of the world at the moment. Let me go through Netflix and see. Can I go into like categories and
Blackpink, the Blackpink documentary right now is apparently awesome. And actually, I will totally watch the crap out of that because of the K-pop connections. It's a documentary about basically Blackpink is one of the most popular female K-pop groups right now. And so there's a documentary of that on television at the moment.
Oh, hey, look at that. When I go into the documentaries section, it is the first thing that pops up. I will add it to my list. Oh, I still need to watch The Social Dilemma, so maybe I'll do that next.
Oh, see, I watched that. There's some stuff that I watch. I mean, whatever. It's not like I don't watch. I just don't. Also, though, like I don't really watch like horror movies or murder mysteries anyways as like a genre. Well, that's very loud. Whatever.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know that my speaker was up.
But those are things that I just don't like in general. So like, why would I watch real versions of them? I'm actually having a really hard time. One of the things that I had never watched was Room, the Brie Larson movie with Jacob Tremblay, because I'd read the book and it was very like viscerally like it hit me in lots of ways, and so that I always had assumed that I'd watched the movie, and it just I keep seeing trailers where I'm like, I actually haven't watched this movie, and so I finally today I'm like, I'm gonna watch this movie. I've only got like 20 minutes left, but it's it's just like viscerally like, again, stuff that like is upsetting. I don't really enjoy, but because I'd read the book, I'm gonna watch this one, but it's like, I don't know. I don't like watching things that are about like scary situations or frustrating situations or sad situations. I am escapist all the way. Why watch content that matters?
Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe to see things from another perspective and understand how another person's experience in the world is formed.
Yes. That is, I mean, that is fair, but I watch a lot of science fiction that sort of tells that to me, but through the lens of aliens. So, you know.
Well, you know, there's lots of documentaries about aliens.
I mean, I live with my mother sometimes, so don't worry. Don't you worry. I watched my fair share.
Is your mom like an alien abduction?
Ancient Aliens. She watches Ancient Aliens so religiously. She loves everything about Ancient Aliens. She actually threatened me one year with going to an Ancient Aliens conference. Or like a convention, because she was like, oh my gosh, we could go to this, and she literally watches like every single episode of Ancient Aliens and then has like all these conspiracy theories.
Is every episode of Ancient Aliens not like just aliens built the pyramids?
Well, it's the aliens built lots of different things on the planet apparently.
Yeah, so. Everything that wasn't built by white people was apparently built by aliens, right? Essentially. That's the assertion. And then there's the one guy who's just like aliens. He's doing the hands, right? Apparently
he's some scientist. I doubt it very much, but
yeah.
Apparently there's lots of stuff. There's like caves and stuff too, so it's not all like man-made stuff. Sometimes it's like
sometimes
things.
It's caves. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I
prefer like a UFOs caught on tape, where they're like interviewing people from the military who are like, yeah, no, like I fly airplanes for a living, and then this thing came out and it was like not an airplane. And you're like, well, I don't know if this guy's crazy because he looks like a very credible source of information. He's still in the military. And yet he's like, yeah, a weird thing happened. And then recently the U.S. military was like, yeah, weird stuff happens sometimes. We don't really have an explanation for it. We put it all in one folder called Project Blue Book, and maybe they're aliens. We don't know. But basically, yeah, I mean, like they confirmed that earlier this year, didn't they? But in 2020, confirming like UFOs was not newsworthy. It was like, yeah, whatever. We got actual problems to deal with. But who knows? Maybe it's the ancient aliens. They're back.
Doing it, of course.
And
because they're not so ancient.
Yeah,
they're
and
like
they made COVID, and that's what happened.
it's kind of really fascinating to watch because I know that my mom watches it with a it's semi-ironic, but also it's not. Like, it's a thing where, like, there's enough scientific gobbledygook that they find, like, you can argue anything. I mean, as somebody who studied debate, like, if you have enough, you can make facts do whatever you want them to, right? Like, that my statistics class in political science was literally, my textbook was how to lie with statistics. Like, if you have enough facts and you manipulate them a certain way, like, that's the whole purpose of,
hey, in 2020, you don't even need facts anymore.
I mean, that's fair.
You can just make things up and say, Trump, I think it was today or yesterday, said something about, like, if I hypothetically went to Exxon and was like, hey, you guys give me $1 billion for my campaign, they'd give me $1 billion. And everybody is like, that's illegal, though. You can't, But if you did hypothetically do that, you can't do that. And then Exxon came out today and was like, just so everybody's super clear, he never did that. That didn't happen because, like, our legal department says that we have to state explicitly we were never involved in a conversation like that, because when you guys find out that he did talk to people, we don't want you coming after us. We didn't have that conversation with him. Because what that says is that he absolutely did go to corporations and was like, give me money for my campaign, and they were like, yes, here's a check. Anyway.
Well, I mean, that is campaigning in like the way that you said it, but not in the way that you.
As I understand it, corporations are not allowed to make contributions, right? That's why. Oh. That's why all of these organizations exist that are basically money laundering schemes, where it's
so that corporations could give money.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something
to special interest groups, and then, like, those special interest groups go to the lobbyists, and it's like that whole thing. Like, corporations aren't supposed to be able to affect politics directly, right? And so there are all these middlemen. It's a whole thing. I think I posted a thing on
lobby
one of the
groups.
social medias.
It's lobby groups.
Well, that and like it's in campaign finance as well, right? So
yeah, I did a finance thing, and I can't remember
the rough thing about that is that it's on both sides, and if you start pulling at that thread, we're gonna start to have to deal with. It's that double-edged sword, right? Of, like, if the Democrats start poking holes in that, it starts pointing back at them real fast.
Yeah.
Because they do it too, right? Everybody does. Which doesn't make it okay. It actually makes it still awful. Anyways. Facts. Let's go back to talking about aliens. This is the thing about conspiracy theories. It is so much easier to believe, because, especially, I think, since the 1950s, it is so much easier to believe that someone has crafted a story than to believe that sometimes things just happen, right? Like sometimes it is as simple as it appears to be. Sometimes it is just terrorists hijacking a plane and flying into a building, right? It's not. There aren't 10 layers of dark funding, because it's going to do X, Y, and Z. But the problem is that sometimes, like Jeffrey Epstein, there is a conspiracy, but the conspiracy there is really simple. And the reason why I can say pretty confidently there is a conspiracy there is because you see a lot of people trying really hard to point fingers at other people, which is almost always the thing that'll indicate to you that there are people who are guilty, right? Because people want to, like, shift blame and that sort of thing. It's like the moon landing is the easiest one to go to and go, like, look, if the moon landing was fake, we would know by now. We know that Nessie is fake. We know that Bigfoot video is fake, right? And both of those conspiracies are not conspiracies. Those are just hoaxes. And the difference between a conspiracy and a hoax is that a hoax is one person. Right.
Are you sure that the Ogopogo isn't real? Because, I mean, the entire livelihood of the Okanagan...
The Ogopogo is most definitely just sturgeons, and logs and wind
Devastating.
currents
Devastating.
on the surface of the water.
Devastating.
Look, if any of these things were real, and hey, I love Destination Truth. In fact, I think we've already had this conversation on the podcast in the past, or on a podcast.
I don't know what Destination Truth is. That's interesting.
Destination Truth was a TV series with Josh Gates where he would go Destination. It was a travel show. Like, it's basically ghost hunters, but for cryptids all over the world.
Nice.
So they would go to somewhere, like they would go to Thailand, and they would have to drive 5 hours out of Bangkok, but they would start in Bangkok, and they would go to a market, and they would eat something like some local thing that you don't get anywhere else. Sometimes it would be something that we in North America would consider weird, like a cricket or something, and it's like, okay, these are not actually weird things if you account for the entirety of the world, but that's fine. And so they would do that. That's how it would start, is like they arrive in a place, and then they would go on the hunt for the local version of Bigfoot. There's a version of Bigfoot in every part of the world, basically. It's not just Bigfoot and Yeti, like everywhere. I think in Africa it's called the mud ape. Like there's all sorts of these things. So there's permutations of everything. There are lake, like Loch Ness Ogopogos everywhere. There are all over the world. People think that there are still dinosaurs walking around. It's just nobody's ever been able to get footage. It's like this television program with a pretty decent budget would go out with very sophisticated equipment and never ever come back with anything, except one time when they thought maybe they had some Yeti hair, and I think it ended up being a yak like 4 years later. So yeah, like if this, I want is in the truest X-Files fashion, I want to believe. I so want us to live in a world where there are still dinosaurs hidden somewhere and Bigfoot exists and all of that sort of thing. Because otherwise, like, if we know everything already, then where's the fun in that? But at the same time, like, sometimes you got to just say, like, I think we would have figured it out by now. And back to the point of Bigfoot and Loch Ness, like, eventually those people who were responsible for it are either found out or give it up, right? Like the guy who perpetrated the Loch Ness hoax, eventually, I think, like, on his deathbed, basically was like, yeah, it was fake. I faked it.
I mean,
right?
the best thing about conspiracy theories like that is like project managers posting things being like, people who believe in conspiracy theories have never tried to project manage, because you cannot get 30 people to do what you need them to do in any sort of time, let alone like with any sort of secrecy. So
yeah, so like I think that stuff happens in the world that is controlled by the government that we don't really hear about, we don't learn about, and there's classified stuff for sure. But
like,
yeah, when it comes to, like,
Sherlock, that was the the Flight of the Dead or whatever. That's a great episode.
Are you talking
of Sherlock.
about the BBC Sherlock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Benedict Cumberbatch one.
I've never watched it. No, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. Just stop. I'm not watching Sherlock.
You specifically said you like true crime stuff. It's
so
crime.
boring. It's so boring. I tried watching the first one, and it was so boring, and I was like, nope, not having it.
All right. I mean, granted, if you know Sherlock, it's the same stories. It's just done in a different way. But anyways, whatever. I disagree with. That's fine. Hey, do we want to talk about the racism happening in Canada and Nova Scotia right now? Before, like, speaking of news that is manipulated.
Do we? I don't know. Do we want to talk about that?
Well, I feel like it's a nice little sandwich because you've got some fun stuff to still talk about at the end of the podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I just feel like we cannot continue on without at least, like, mentioning that there is some malarkey happening on the East Coast, and we call out American racism all the time, and I think that it's just important for us to like look at me getting political. I'm never the one that's political on the podcast.
Yeah, you're always trying to stop me.
I am. And so all I feel like is that it needs to be acknowledged. And if you're in Vancouver, there's going to be a rally this Saturday. So I can imagine that other cities across Canada.
I don't think we have any listeners in Vancouver.
Okay. Well, whatever.
I don't think that any of look, if we did, they would be our friends. And I don't think that any of our friends listen to this podcast.
I mean, that is fair. But
if you're in Vancouver, please let us know. Like, how have you not let us know at this point? How have you been listening to us talk about Arrow and nonsense for the last year and not told us that you're also in Vancouver?
I feel like at one point in time somebody messaged us that they were in Vancouver, I think. Maybe. Anyways.
Yeah, but would you like to explain what is, because you've not actually told the listeners who don't know what you're talking about what you're talking about.
So there are I'll stop calling them racists, but I feel like I want to keep calling them racists. So the term we're using is non-Indigenous fishermen, who are basically attacking the livelihoods of, my pronunciation is always never great. I think it's the Mi'kmaq fishermen who are fish for lobster under treaty rights in terms of their ability to sustain themselves and sell lobster for a little bit of profit. There has been this big basically to-do in which non-Indigenous fishermen feel like their livelihoods are being threatened and essentially are enacting terrible violence and threatening the livelihood of these Indigenous populations. And the worst part about it is that the government isn't doing anything about it. So basically the RCMP are failing to act and protect the rights of the Indigenous fishermen. And we're just letting basically racism go unchecked. And specifically it's about how stuff is being reacted to in the media, in which if there's ever something that comes from a perspective in which Indigenous people are standing up for their rights or are in some way threatening colonist economic projects, it's always seen as a threat. It's always met with force. Yeah. And right now what we're seeing is the exact opposite of that, because right now the people that are being threatened are Indigenous populations. And so it's just showing this stark contrast to how the law is supposed to uphold and protect the rights of everybody and punish those people who are in violation of that. And right now there's that great meme, I don't know, where it's like, I don't watch Family Guy, haven't for a long time, in which it holds up like a color card next to a person, and it goes from like white skin to black skin, and then the threshold in which something becomes terrorism is dependent on the color of your skin, because essentially what's happening is terrorism in Nova Scotia against Indigenous populations, and people are failing to call it that because it's being enacted by people whose skin color does not fit that threshold for labels. And it's just really an interesting conversation. There's been an emergency debate, I think, called in Parliament. So Canada is being held accountable because of all of the reactions from people online right now. My Facebook is absolutely flooded with it. And I'm so proud of my friend circle for being vocal about this. And because if they weren't, I wouldn't know about it either, because I have my head in the sand most of the time. And I'm just really grateful that people are speaking up. And now you know as well, because it's on this podcast. So feel free to look into it. There's some businesses in Nova Scotia that are doing an awesome job. They're actually stopping serving lobster until stuff gets figured out. And at the core of all of this, right, economics, we're dealing with crazy times, and it's all about livelihoods. And at the core of everything comes down to greed and capitalism. So let's deconstruct that. I mean, we look back to there's a lot of memes going around too, or what is that? There's one meme, right, where it's like, if you're having problems with Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, maybe you should have just picked your own cotton, right? And it's really that would have solved a lot of problems. So anyways, that's it. I just wanted to call out, people think that Canada is all nice and friendly and anti-racist, and that is not the case in many circumstances.
We have just managed to hide our systemic racist issues in ghettos that we call reservations, right? Like,
oh yeah, I mean the Flint water crisis that's everywhere. I mean that's happening in northern indigenous communities and has been for years.
Yeah,
and the government is failing to act.
We're no better when it comes to that stuff, and indigenous people are definitely treated as second class. And I know that there are a lot of, I know this because we grew up in Penticton, so heard a lot of it, which is that, you know, like if they want to have a reservation where they get to make their own rules, then they got to deal with stuff themselves. Where it's like, actually, it's not that cut and dry. Because a lot of people will say things like to that tone of indigenous people on reservations, they don't have to do certain things, right? They don't have to pay certain taxes and like that. It's complex, but they have. It's called sovereignty, but it's not sovereignty, because having a reservation in the middle of what is the rest of the province is considered it's considered Canada. So you're like isolated. You can't actually have sovereignty when you're completely reliant on the country that you're surrounded by. But the fact of the matter is that these nations are in the situations that they're in because of hundreds of years of oppression from colonizers, right? And that means that we are responsible to. It's not even help, because that's like a very infantilizing way of looking at it. No, but protect
and honor and recognize.
It's restitution, right? Yeah. Like that's the word for it. Is that like there's a duty to render aid whenever it's necessary, because they're in that situation. These nations aren't prosperous because we took away all of their ability to prosper, and I mean, like, that's painting with a very broad brush, because there are nations that are actually very prosperous, but they're few and far between, and there are a lot more people in indigenous communities that are suffering when they might be literally surrounded by a city. Right? Yeah.
And we leave people. But on a positive note, just because I want to sort of say, like, people are being fantastic. And also, one of the ways that we can empower people is to let them tell their own stories. And I don't know if you've watched Trickster yet, but Trickster just premiered on CBC. And having just finished watching Schitt's Creek and being like, why isn't there more good Canadian content? I think the CBC is trying. It's trying to create more things. And so Trickster, I think 2 episodes have officially come out. It seems like an interesting sort of grounded sci-fi, I guess is the term, like a little bit of fantasy, where basically it's the conceit is that this young indigenous man is the son of a trickster, and they don't really get too deep into stuff. It's sort of like a little creepy in the first episode, but I highly recommend, if it's available to you check it out. Just to sort of add a little bit of a cool, tie it back into the podcast thing, check out and support awesome indigenous art. That is. I'm looking
to. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, Trickster. It's on CBC Gem. So if you're in Canada, you can just watch. Yeah, 2 episodes are out. Cool. I will check this out for sure.
Yeah. I think there's gonna be some cool things. I mean, I think we chatted about it previously that Netflix is gonna come out with some more animated content. And I think there's an animated Netflix series that has actually First Nations content. It's like I forget what it's called. It's like the something. Anyways, I should actually like look up stuff before I
start talking about it.
Start talking about it. Somebody posted it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch this," and then I couldn't remember. But Molly of Denali is another like cute kid show that has existed in animated space, again made by First Nations individuals. So yeah.
Cool. Do you want me to talk about Bly Manor now?
I do, so that we can move away from. But I'm pleased. I'm pleased that I actually had something to contribute. I forgot that I watched a brand new series, and that was the one. So Trickster, I'm glad that I had something to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah, so I finished Bly Manor. Is this the sort of thing that you watch? Did you watch Haunting of Hill House?
No.
I'm gonna try and make a case for it.
Isn't it scary?
No.
What?
Not even remotely. It's creepy for sure.
Isn't it called The Haunting of Bly Manor?
Yeah.
Well,
there are ghosts in it.
It's like inherent. Yeah. Well, okay, come on. I consider that scary. Like, I am considering watching A Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting because that seems very much within my realm, and also has Draco Malfoy in it, and I'm very excited.
I'm gonna save you some time.
Oh,
we
no.
watched it 2 days ago, yesterday maybe. No, 2 days. We watched it on Saturday. It is not good.
Aww. It seems fun.
The art direction in it is fantastic. The trailer is really well cut. Tom Felton is awful. Awful.
So much.
Just doing his worst, I don't know, like British rocker persona as the boogeyman. It's so bad. It's so awful. And it sucks because everybody in it is trying really hard. And I think that a couple of the kids that they cast are really good. The lead is really good. And the effects are phenomenal. But the story is very meandering. And I could have been 45 minutes when it is like 2 hours.
Oh dear. Oh really?
And
see, that's frustrating.
And the I don't want to say production value because, like I said, the effects are great. The skill of the team is something that I'm gonna say like the post team is something that I would consider a little bit lackluster. The editing is awful. The mixing is awful. Like it
seems pretty low budget, so I don't know if I necessarily.
It's a Netflix movie. But like there's a lot of stuff on Netflix that definitely meets the minimum requirements for competent storytelling. This is like a hair under it, but that hair is very noticeable because there are just so many times where it's like, I see what you guys were going for, and it's like you laid out all of the pieces in the right way, but there's something off about this edit. There's something off about the score. There's something off about the sound mix. Like everything, like when I say the sound mix, it's like stuff like there will be an action sequence and nothing hits. Nothing hits hard. And you're like, I'm sorry, am I supposed to be feeling some sort of intensity here? And there are moments where it's just like where the bad guy is like, no, I won't let you stop me. And then he's dancing in the background while the girls are figuring out, like they're taking 15 minutes to figure out what their next move is. And it's like, I'm sorry, where's the sense of urgency in this? Like, Kara definitely enjoyed it. She said that she liked it when it was done. And
maybe it's made for children.
Oh, it's absolutely, but that's not an excuse.
All right.
That's not an excuse, right? Like that was an excuse back in the 90s, I think, is that like, oh, this is a Disney Channel movie, but for me it's like we do better nowadays.
Yes,
even for the kids stuff, we do better. Like there's a lot of stuff that's been on Netflix, kids movies and that sort of thing that are great. Yeah. Look, let me point at a movie that is definitely for kids, that is definitely paint by numbers, but that executes flawlessly. There's a movie called Monster Trucks. Monster Trucks is literally about a monster, an alien monster thing. I don't remember if it comes from outer space or from deep in the ground, but I think it comes from deep in the ground because I think that they're drilling or something. In any case, this monster finds its way inside of our hero's truck, like the protagonist's truck. Awesome. Everybody else in town has these big fancy trucks, because it's like a small town.
What are you saying about small towns there?
It's like a small town around like an oil rig, sort of everybody works on the oil rig. So like the status symbol in this town is having a nice truck, and our lead has an awful truck. His truck sucks. But then this alien monster thing goes inside the truck and drives it, and so he can do all sorts of crazy cool stuff with his truck now because there's this octopus monster inside of it. And it's E.T. meets motocross. Like it's so paint by numbers, yet it's actually a pretty good movie. Like I really, really liked it. And like it shouldn't be, but it's a very competent, very well made. I'm
excited to imagine it. Hey, I sent you the article too. The television series is called Spirit Rangers. And specifically the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because the article, I haven't read too much about it, but it specifically calls out that Netflix is going to have an all native writers room for this animated series, and I just think that that's really cool. So.
Yeah, I'm down for this. This looks cool.
Yeah.
But
Haunting of Bly Manor.
Back to Bly Manor.
Yeah.
So here's the thing with the Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor. They are it's like a genre shell game, right? It's like
okay.
They're not actually. They are absolutely wrapped in the trappings of spooky, scary stories. And there's a lot of the like creepy ghosts and whatnot, and there's a little bit of violence and death and that sort of thing, obviously. But it's all very like rote. When it comes to the spooky stuff, it's like we never focus on it in these shows. It's always an environmental component of it until the last 2 episodes, when you start to get into the like, oh, so that's what's happening. That's why, right? And because they're hauntings, it ultimately comes down to a human story, right? And so what you do, both seasons follow the same format, and this doesn't give anything away. I'm going to be very vague about it so that it's not spoilerish, but this is the format. Character or characters come to place of haunting. Establish place is definitely haunted. We're not beating around the bush with this. It's not Signs, where we're going to spend a bunch of the movie like with things chittering around in the background. It's like, no, by the end of the first episode, you've seen a ghost. As a matter of fact, it's going to be treated in a super casual fashion for the first 3 or 4 episodes because like buckle up. We're 10 episodes and there's going to be lots of ghosts. It's not jump scares for the most part. The unsettling parts are often performances and character moments. The ghosts are they are scary versions of the Haunted Mansion. Right? Like
I find the Haunted Mansion quite scary.
Oh my god, then you're
yes,
you are truly lost.
I know I am. I don't like scary things. I'm not going to watch it for fun.
A baby.
I agree.
Haunted Mansion isn't even remotely scary.
Come on. It's supposed to be, and I buy into it. So like I don't know. fine, give me a hard time all you want, but I am never going to try to pretend to be something that I'm not. And
that's fair,
like,
but
honestly, I get so scared at the smallest thing, and darkness and anything to do with creepiness. It took all of my energy. I watched Hotel de Luna, which is a Korean drama about a hotel in which ghosts stay overnight in the hotel. And the reason that I didn't like die watching it is because I specifically watched it during the day, because I couldn't watch it at night, even though it's like straight up not a scary show. It just happens to have ghosts in it. I can't deal with them. Like, I just can't.
Well, both. Don't watch them then. You shouldn't watch.
I won't.
These
I'm not
shows.
going to. I'm not going to. I never was going to.
But the key to them, the thing that makes them both so great, both seasons great, and it's the same show. It's just like it's 2 seasons of the same show. There's just different locations, so they change up the name a little bit, because they're very self-contained, because they're about these specific hauntings, right? And like I said, it always comes down to a human story. And I would say season 1 is a little bit more of the spooky scary, because the genesis of the haunting is a little bit more malicious. But season 2 is, for me, it's not scary at all. It's not even. There's a couple of moments that are like skin crawl. It's like, ooh, that's a creepy visual, right? But like the ghosts are just people. This isn't a spoiler because it's in the marketing, like the posters and stuff. The ghosts are like people with no facial features. Like they've basically got like skin grown over their eyes. Oh my god,
that sounds so freaky.
Yeah, it's definitely creepy to look at, but. Ugh. But it's not like, I don't know, like it's slow. And I think that's the thing for me that makes it really good. It's the showrunner, I'll look him up while I'm talking. He's very skilled in creating these stories that are about people, but that are, like I said, wrapped in the tropes and the trappings of Mike Flanagan is the showrunner of it's not even horror. I guess it's technically horror, but it's just sort of like a ghost story, right? And so there's a lot of the like it definitely borrows very heavily on Asian horror storytelling, like The Grudge and The Ring and stuff like that. There's a lot of those elements, but the pacing of it is done in such a way that you don't. It doesn't do what horror usually does, which horror usually gets the heart rate up and then crashes and then gets you back up and then crashes. And that's where the thrill ride component of horror movies comes from, right? And that's why slasher films are the sort of go-to genre.
Ugh, I hate
and
slasher
everything goes back into a slasher film, to one extent or another. Because that's the easiest, right? Because a slasher is build up, kill, and the kill is like an instant climax with no denouement, no falling action, right? Like the kill happens and then we cut to something else, right? In like a Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer or Texas Chainsaw Massacre or whatever, right? It's like
I will say I quite enjoyed those. Like I didn't actually enjoy them, but I watched them as a 90s kid. Like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream.
But you've seen Cabin in the Woods, right?
I love Cabin in the Woods. Yeah. Also though, it's creepy. Like to me that's a scary movie.
To me, like where Cabin in the Woods is a comedy, right? Haunting is a drama. So it's like those things are in there, and it's like Cabin in the Woods plays with the tropes and it's very it's self-referential because of the type of story that it is. It's very like postmodern, which I don't know that anybody's really done a postmodern drama, so to speak, in the same, because like because Crystal and I actually just watched Cabin in the Woods a couple weeks ago because I want to watch scary movies because it's Halloween, right? All month. For those who don't know, Halloween isn't a day; it's a month.
I mean, it's
actually
lifestyle.
like a month and a half.
It's a lifestyle.
My pitch to her was like, it's basically like what Community is for sitcoms. Cabin in the Woods is that for horror movies, where it's like, here are all of the tropes. We're going to turn them on their head. We're going to basically take the trope and pull it inside out so that you can see the guts, and then we can all point and laugh at it. The Haunting series are the same sort of thing, but with drama, where it's like, we're going to use this stuff in order to fuel a very character focused, very dramatic story, where you're going to get very heavily invested in these characters. So when some of them die, it's really going to be upsetting. And
I mean, fair. That's like I also got scared with, what was it, Walking Dead? I found very creepy, but that also was like about characters.
Yeah, it's like Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor are a lot like Walking Dead, only instead of being boring, lame, and not good, they're awesome.
Okay.
No, the first 2 seasons of Walking Dead are really good, but imagine if The Walking Dead was just those 2 seasons, and then you were done. And then you were done, and you didn't have to watch any more. That's what Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor.
You know that I just did that. I like watched the first 3 seasons and then just stopped watching.
And then you just stopped.
And it's still quite good in my head because I stopped watching.
Yeah, those further seasons really ruin everything.
I didn't want my favorite character to die. So
Who's your favorite character?
I don't remember anybody's names.
Can you describe them?
Yeah, the one Asian guy. That was in the...
Glenn, yeah. He does die eventually.
I know! Stop it! Don't! In my brain, he didn't, because I didn't let him die.
His eye pops out of his head.
Blech.
It's graphic.
Thanks.
I think that might be like the last thing that I ever watched for Walking Dead, and I wasn't watching that season. I just watched that. I don't even think like I meant to. It was one of those things where it was just on social media, and I just was subjected to it.
I just remember, because I was so far behind on Walking Dead, that I knew a certain amount of stuff was coming. And I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily want you to spoil Walking Dead for me, because maybe I'll come back to it at some point in time. But I remember there being this whole thing where it's like, if Daryl dies, we riot. And it's like, that was like the only character anybody cared about. And I was kind of like, really?
I never cared about
I don't know.
Daryl, but
I do like that nobody gave a crap about the main guy. Like the guy in the Carl memes.
Rick?
Like, yeah. I really didn't know. I watched so much of this show and I didn't know their names.
That's fine. Yeah. I don't know. So, like, the other thing about the Mike Flanagan stuff that's really great is that he uses the same actors. So, one of the leads actually 2 of the leads from Hill House are leads in Bly Manor, but then
I thought it was a spin-off. Is it not?
They are. It's like the Haunting universe, but it's sort of it's like a theater company where it's like, what are they putting on this year?
Repertoire. I love it.
Because next year right now they're filming Midnight Mass, and Rahul Kohli, who is in Bly Manor.
Oh, I love him.
Is in Midnight Mass as well. So it's like, and a bunch of the actors are coming back, and some of them aren't, some of them are, right? Like it's really cool to see some of these actors come back and interact with each other in different ways in completely different contexts, and especially because Hill House was told it was like a past future, past present, I guess, storyline, right? Where it was like, we have the present day storyline that we're following, but we're flashing back to when these kids were kids growing up in Hill House, and that's why their lives are all messed up as adults, right? And then
Haunted houses will do that too. So.
Yeah, and then in Bly Manor, some of those actors come back, but Bly Manor doesn't have the split timeline sort of thing. There's a little bit of a split timeline going on, but not in the same way. It as a matter of fact, I think that he did that on purpose, where it's like in the first couple episodes you're like, oh, okay, cool, so we're gonna like go back and experience some of this stuff, and fill in the gaps and whatever. And there's a little bit of that, but for the most part it's actually very linear in the way that they tell the story. And I mean, by the end of it, it actually ends up being the Bly Manor specifically is about relationships, like romantic relationships, and where
it's all about shipping. Maybe I'll like it.
Where they go wrong and where they go right. So it's I think it's fantastic. I think if you can stomach the spooky scaries, which I don't particularly find spooky scary in this context, it's worthwhile.
Right on.
And Rahul Kohli in Bly Manor is he has 2 monologues that are fantastic. That is just, like, I loved him on iZombie. The whole way through. As a matter of fact, I would say by the last 2 seasons of iZombie, he's the reason why I was continuing to watch that show. And yet, like, he comes in Bly Manor and it's like a completely different actor. Because iZombie is very comedic and very irreverent, whereas Bly Manor is dramatic, and he crushes it, man. He's so good amongst a bunch of other great performances. Like, there's I wouldn't say there's not a bad performance in Bly Manor, but unfortunately I think that the weakest one is the lead. But only by virtue of the fact that she's doing the same thing that she did in the first season in Hill House. But so it's kind of it's diminishing returns in my opinion, but it's not really about her. It's about everybody else around her. She's just our everyman portal into the story, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, everybody else's performances are like mind-blowingly good.
Nice.
So I highly recommend it. I won't go any further than that because I don't want to spoil anything. I may have already. I don't think I've given away anything, but
I don't know. You sound pretty non-spoilery to me, and I'm sure people that are excited for it. I mean, I don't even watch this kind of genre stuff, and I know about it. Like, even I'm like, my Netflix is like on the like save screen, how sometimes comes up, and like The Haunting of Hill House keeps coming up, and I'm kind of like, why are you advertising this to me? You know I'm not going to watch it.
Because that's how they make their shows number 1. That's how they do
it. But I know, but it's like, but you're advertising to the wrong person. They're usually much better at that. To like be like, we know what you're gonna watch.
But Hill House and like it's like Haunting and Stranger Things and you'll see in January Cobra Kai, the shows that are the ones that they want to make into hits. Mm-hmm. They do it by ramming it down people's throats. So
I mean, yeah.
What happens is you get a bunch of people who genuinely are interested in it. They check it out. They dig into it, and then they start telling people about it, and then it's billboard advertising, right? So it's just hit your audience as many times as you can, and eventually they will buy a can of Coke. It's actually marketing 101. It's super simple, and the other apps have not figured it out. Actually, that's not true. Amazon Prime is very good.
I was going to say, Boys was all over
because
that,
Amazon has the larger network, like the synergy of being able to like make special tape to put on their packages, so that when you are opening up a package, it says on the tape, "Hey, don't forget to check out The Boys on Amazon Prime," and you're like, "What? Why are you advertising to me, box that I just ordered of things?" But yeah, so Amazon's got it figured out too, but the other ones are not so good. The Canadian ones. Crave sucks. It's awful. Crave is just not good in general, but I need it in order to watch
I will
stuff.
say that overall it's because Canada doesn't understand how to market itself properly when it comes to media, and Crave TV calls are one of those.
Yeah. Well, Canadian TV is just a whole thing. We've talked about that before. I'm pissed off right now because tonight they aired a 1-hour episode of DuckTales that was all Darkwing Duck, and there is not a single legitimate way for me to watch this television program in Canada right now to be up to date.
For which one?
For DuckTales.
Sorry. All of that is so frustrating.
The closest I can get is if I pay $30 on iTunes to buy Volume 5, which is not clearly defined as, is it 5 episodes? Because some of the volumes are like 6 episodes. Or is it the whole season? Is it going to... Because DuckTales so far is 3 seasons, but already on iTunes they have 5 volumes.
So
I don't know what that means.
Very unclear.
Super unclear. But it's $30. It's got episodes 1 through 11 of season 3 so far. The Darkwing one, Let's Get Dangerous, is episode 12 and 13. It's because it's a 1 hour. But for some reason, episode 10's just not on there yet. It's just not on there. Of the recent, like the second half of season 3 that we've gotten so far, 8, 9, and 11 are on there right now, but for some reason 10's not. That's the closest I can get to legitimately watching DuckTales in Canada right now, because Disney XD hasn't aired any of the new episodes since September. Not a single one of them yet. And I don't understand how this happens. I don't understand how Disney lets this happen. And everything should just be on Disney Plus. Before we recorded, I was fuming about it to Crystal, and she was just going, just like you are. But I'm so mad.
So intently.
Obviously, the podcast network is named after his freaking plane. Like, Darkwing Duck is so important to me. I want to watch this episode more than anything right now, and I cannot get it. I'm really hoping that tomorrow morning when I wake up, it's on there. It's on iTunes so that I can just buy these episodes. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted. You'll know next week.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to hear this update from you.
DuckTales is really good. Like you as someone who is working in animation, you should be watching DuckTales because it's everything that you can do right with animation right now. Nice. It is the best animated television program that there is. It's better than a lot of movies that come out. Cool. I think that's it. I think we covered some good stuff. So I have nothing else to talk about. Cool. Well, thank you guys for listening. I was about to do like the whole intro. I don't have to do it anymore. Life is so much simpler now that I don't have to do that. Yay. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Stay safe, everyone. Wash your hands and be kind to one another. Follow the Thunderquack Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the Thunderquack Podcast. You can support us in 3 ways. First, by heading to the podcast service of your choice and leaving a rating and review. Second, by going to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merch from your favorite podcasts. And last but not least, by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack to kick in with your monthly pledge of support and get cool rewards like early access, ad-free episodes, and extended episodes. The Thunderquack Podcast is the official podcast of thunderquack.com. Head to thunderquack.com to discover more great podcasts.